Just had my second day in Vietnam. Figured I'd do a video about how you guys can, totally unrelated, but just how you guys can basically get all the foundations for getting a job. Basically, these are the things where you can't really miss any of them because if you miss any of them, it's just going to essentially lose you the opportunity. So all the basics about what you need. First is just build a resume. If you're in finance, then there's really a specific format that everyone uses. So if you just don't know that or don't have that, then it's just going to make you seem like an outsider. It won't necessarily disqualify you, but just having that kind of gives people the, oh, okay, he knows what he's doing. He knows like basically the in crowd. He's part of it, just the way it is. Next, obviously have a cover letter. I'll share my screen to show you guys what that is supposed to look like. I'll build it very quick one. Okay, finished it up. Basically, you can start off with a date. You don't always have to. Then, dear Goldman Sachs hiring team, for example, my name is blank and I'm applying for X position. Then maybe add another sentence like, I believe my background doing XYZ, if you already have some experience, has provided me the ability to, say, work well on large transactions or handle a lot of responsibility. And my team on the exchanges and brokerage team within financial institutions has provided me unique insight into investor demands and how they view investment opportunities, which uniquely qualifies me for this investing role. For example, you can reword it, it's ChatGPT, but that's essentially something you can do. Then I typically will have three body paragraphs, not too long, maybe 6 or 7 lines each, could be less, and just why the company, why the industry, why the role. These can comprise your first two, and have at least one where you list tangible experiences that demonstrate relevant skills or qualities. For this, I really want to emphasize the tangible project. So a lot of people, when I read their cover letter or if they have a resume summary or a LinkedIn profile, they just try and mention their attributes. I'm very detail oriented and I'm very hard. This person XYZ, like they'll say their own name in third person, is very hardworking. And this sounds boastful and literally has zero weight, as literally anyone can just say that. Instead, mention things that you did. For example, during my job at 7-Eleven, after demonstrating continued punctuality and engaging customer service, my manager began increasing my responsibilities, such as I was trusted to close the store on evening shifts. Rather than saying XYZ is a trustworthy individual, you mentioned things that you did that proved to your manager that you were trustworthy and showed that they found you trustworthy. And then therefore, the person reading this will say, oh, okay, I trust it too, because they listed something tangible. Close with, thank you for your time for considering my candidacy, and I look forward to hearing back. Something, short like that. And then sincerely, your name, and you can put your contact info if you want to. Next thing I would say is run this through ChatGPT and ask it, hey, do you have any improvements to this cover letter for wording? You can just take some of their suggestions, some of their words, some of the phrasing that they use to restructure your sentences. Just take it as someone editing your paper, and you don't have to copy and paste from ChatGPT, but read it through and see if there's improvements that you can take from that and put into your own. You can also ask them for templates or just find them online. There's many. You can even open Word and there's cover letter templates and resume templates people don't use. Lastly, don't forget to bring this cover letter to your career center as well. Chat makes it easier, but I used this as a template and went to the career center when I was a senior, and they basically looked at it in shock and awe and said it was like perfect, and they were like, no suggestions. But again, this is senior year. If you're a freshman, they'll be able to catch some stupid things that you say because you will say them because you just don't know any better. You're a freshman, and there's just things that sound unprofessional that you wouldn't understand or catch. And the Career Center may be able to catch those or just tell you, hey, I would suggest rewording this. Next is actually preparing for interview. Of course, apply to jobs. People ask me, what do I do? They're like, Indeed or Monster? I'm like, yeah, sure. or LinkedIn. I prefer LinkedIn. I think there's a lot better jobs than Indeed or Monster, but I don't know why people get all hung up on that. Like, where do I apply? Just find the jobs online and apply. Search for ones you want. You can search on ZipRecruiter and all these different job boards. I think LinkedIn is the best. And then also, what's better is when the top companies in your industry, like your Goldman Sachs, JP, your Evercore, your Lazard, etc., when these in your industry, it's better to even just go on their company website and go to their careers page and then just apply there. It's much better actually, because some of these companies don't post things on job boards because they get so many applications, so they don't need to. And the highest quality candidates will be going to the company's website anyway. They won't be going on job boards. So another little tip. But yeah, either way, just search for what you want. If you're in college and you're a freshman, you can just search freshman internships or whatever it is. Same thing if you're a sophomore. And if you want one off cycle during the semester, you can search off cycle internships. You can search unpaid internships if you're a freshman and get your foot in the door with some good experience early on. And once you get selected, you want to be preparing for the interview. And the questions that they ask you is tell me about yourself. And this may just sound very vague, but you really need to make it into a story. Like when there's a comedian that's just snappy, funny jokes, it's not very entertaining, but when they have a really intriguing story, it gets you more involved. And then when the punchline hits, it's more effective than say a sitcom where they just have a singer. So you want to have a personal story that flows where it's much more memorable to the person that's listening because people can remember stories much easier than they can remember just facts or random things that people say. So talk about, hey, I grew up here. I decided to go to this college for this reason. And then I got really interested in this space for the XYZ reason. And that's what brings me here. People might call it your elevator pitch, but in an interview, it could be 2 minutes long. I've heard some as long as 5 minutes. I think that's too much, but it's worked for that person. Next, you want to be prepared to answer like, why do you want to work at this company? Why do you want to work in that industry? And why do you want to work at that role within the company in particular and within that industry? So have one for each. For company, make sure it's illustrating something unique about that company compared to competitors. For example, if they're faster growing, you can mention that's really exciting to you. If they're like more established company, you can talk about how working for a reputable and established firm, working on the industry leading deals and the largest transactions, you find that exciting too. And for example, I've heard something work where they talked about the marketing. For example, HSBC tries to market themselves as the most international bank. And I remember during a career fair, one of the people there said, in his interview, he talked about how whenever he was at an airport, he would always see the bank's advertisements on the strip going down to the plane. And he thought that was great marketing, for example. So it just shows that you're passionate about the company. And if you can't think of anything, you can just look at some company reviews online and take some positives from there. Just find at least one positive review on Glassdoor. Just say what it said there and say, hey, I saw online there were good reviews about, say, the culture, management, etc. Those are the low-hanging fruit. Next is you want to be prepared for behavioral questions. So this is tell me about a time when you demonstrated leadership in work or in the classroom. Look up the STAR method for this: situation, task, action, result. That's just a guideline for it. Yeah, look that up to prepare more. And then next is obviously technical questions. Just Google the technical questions for that role that you're interviewing for, as it really varies per role. Next is preparing questions for the company. So look at every page on the company website, especially the About Us or history pages, and take notes and look up recent news and press releases. Press releases can also be found on the company website. And if public, you can also look at recent earnings calls using Seeking Alpha. It's a website where you can find the transcripts and see what management said about their plans, and the Q&A with analysts where they talk about their strategic plans. Some low-hanging fruit questions, if you can't think of any, or say the interview preemptively answered some of yours, you can always ask them like, hey, I'd love to hear about how you joined the company and your story. You can ask about, hey, what's the culture of this firm? What qualities are you looking for most in a candidate for this position? What will I learn in this role? Can you talk about the day-to-day responsibilities and what's the work split between the various duties in the role? Just more low-hanging fruit. And last, I would say do at least one mock interview with your career center or even with friends, as many as you can if possible. It's the difference between making a speech or doing a presentation that you rehearsed 5 times versus just winging it, right? I think we've all done that in school where we have a presentation and we just wing it and it's pretty messy. And then we have times where we prepare and we pretty much have a script memorized, right? So the difference is pretty gigantic. Sometimes I initially even take real interviews with positions I don't really want to get practice in. Now, if you don't do interviews for a while, usually the first couple are a bit awkward and you might be more nervous, you might sweat a bit more. So colleges don't want you to use real interviews for practice, but you can just say that when you went to the interview and asked questions about the company, you realized it probably wasn't the best fit, which is perfectly fine. I've done that. You are both interviewing each other. Lastly, make sure you send a thank you email. I know people that didn't realize they're supposed to do that. Format it like the subject can be thank you space hyphen space interview, and then you can say hi interviewer, comma, enter. Thank you for the interview today or yesterday. For me, I always try and schedule my interviews in the morning, like around 10 a.m. So you're one of the first interviews usually. So it's a bit more memorable because it's been shown that interviewers remember most the people in the beginning and at the end of the day. The ones in the middle get muddled. So I'll try and schedule it in the beginning of the day and then send my thank you email at like 4:30, 5:30 p.m. at the end of the day. So then I'm back in fresh in their mind again after they finished all the interviews. And if I have it at night or in the middle of the day, if I'm forced to, then I'll send it first thing in the next morning. So that way I'm top of mind the next morning. And usually the points that I stick to is I'll say, I appreciate that you taking the time to speak with me about, and then maybe mention something specific they mentioned in the interview if you can, or just say, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. And then I'll also say, I enjoyed discussing my backgrounds and interests, and then say something you spoke about in particular in the interview. I'll say, thank you for the interview. I appreciate something that I appreciate, like them answering my questions or taking the time to speak about a subject. And then three is I enjoy discussing something. So it gives you a few opportunities to mention things in the interview. And then just close it off with looking forward to hearing back regarding potential next steps or looking forward to hear back regarding my candidacy or whatever it is. And then your sign off. Kind regards, me. Ask them for contact info if you don't have it. If it's in person, you can usually find it in the calendar invite, given most or Zoom or team invites nowadays. But yeah, make sure you like it's perfectly appropriate to ask them for their contact info after an interview to be like, hey, could I have your contact info? You can even mention you want to send a thank you email, but you don't have to. Yeah, that's the basics. You need all of that to get a position. A lot of this you guys might already know, but I know there's people out there I've personally met that have been applying, and they didn't know these things. So I just wanted to make sure you guys have the foundations and the fundamentals if you didn't know it already. Hey, so I just remembered something. I was actually reviewing a friend's resume and it clicked that this is something I see very often, which is having resumes over one page. Make it one page. It's always one page. Try not to have too much white space. I did mention I'll have templates that you guys can use that I'll attach in the description if you're watching this on YouTube or Rumble. And if you're not, just find it on either of those platforms. But yeah, if you were thinking of not using the template or expanding upon the template that I provided, then please just make sure that it is one page only. If you have different sections, make sure there's not just a whole column of white space, things like this. Just make sure it's neat, one full page, generally goes across the entire page. I've heard someone in HR say, oh, if the bullets only go halfway through the page, then that's not good. Not everyone's going to care about that, but you just want to minimize potential disqualifications. So just make it one page, fill up the entire page, not too much white space, and don't forget that. Okay. Make sure to like, subscribe, etc.